What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So I don't know what happened yesterday, but a ton of gaming news hit the internet. There was a lot to go over today. We're gonna have to move kind of quickly to fit it all into 20 minutes. This includes Sony and their most recent financial report, as well as a new label they've introduced showing quite a bit more interest in PC gaming than maybe we were originally thinking. We also have the Nintendo 64 games to talk about, specifically ones that may have leaked a bit early through that data mining as people have started to match up these different game IDs in that alphabetical order. And we're also gonna be talking about Activision and Blizzard seemingly absorbing yet another developer. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure that like button helps out a ton. And if new here to the Spawn Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below and ring that notification bell so you can keep up to date with all the uploads here on the channel. And we're gonna start today with Facebook, or I guess Meta, and Oculus. But while there was a lot of talk around Ready Player One, basically from Meta and Facebook, there was some talk around different games heading to Oculus Quest 2, and one caught me a bit off guard. We can see this over on their website. Grand Theft Auto San Andreas is heading to Oculus Quest 2. They say this is a project many years in the making, and we can't wait to show you more of it. You know what? I'm so curious about this. I'm gonna have to look into it and probably pick it up to play. I mean, San Andreas is an awesome game, but like in VR, like first person playing through. Sure, why not? I like the idea of seeing some of these classics in a different light, but one thing that is a bit of a hang-up for a lot of people is the fact that you need a Facebook account in order to log in and use the store and your Quest 2 and all this. Well, it appears that Facebook, or I guess Meta, is looking to maybe remove that barrier. We can see this over on Twitter from Steven at Axios, where he was quoting them over on a Facebook post saying, "We're working on new ways to log into Quest that won't require a Facebook account, landing sometime next year." So I'm curious, if they removed that barrier or that requirement that you need a Facebook account in order to get the most out of the Oculus Quest, would you look into picking one of these all-in-one VR headsets up to try things out like Resident Evil 4 and San Andreas? I'm not a big fan of having to use a Facebook account to play a game on a VR headset, so if they did remove that, yeah, I would become a lot more interested in the Quest 2. Also, we did have games announced for PlayStation Plus in the month of November. We can head over to PlayStation blog, where they have a nice little card at the top here showing off the different games. These games will be available starting November 2nd, running until December 6th. I still recommend claiming all of these games, even if you're not looking to play them right away, because, hey, you never know. Sometime in the future, you might want to check one of these out. We have Knockout City, that being for PS5 and PS4. I don't really know how great of a headlining title that is, considering the game was basically free up to a certain level, so you're able to at least get an idea of the game to see if it was for you, but there it is. And then we have Kingdoms of Amalur: Re-Reckoning. That's for PS4, backwards compatible, of course, on the PS5. We have First Class Trouble, PS5 and PS4. They did mention they were going to be adding some PlayStation VR games as well, and they did. The Persistence, The Walking Dead, Saints and Sinners, the Standard Edition, and Until You Fall. Now, looking at the list of games they have included here, I would recommend Kingdoms of Amalur: Re-Reckoning. I think it was a really good game that people missed out on, and the fact that it's just being thrown in the PlayStation Plus and you just hit download to try it out might be a good month to do that. Oh, and we've of course been tracking these Metroid Dread sales as we get numbers, and we did get some updated numbers from Famitsu for last week in Japan, these being physical sales. We'll find out more from Nintendo, I think, in the coming week or two when they do their financial report. Maybe they want to talk about Metroid Dread and its sales performance, but we can head over here to Famitsu, where we can see at the top Demon Slayer, that being 15,996, Blue Reflection, Ring Fit Adventure, and then we get down to Metroid Dread, a tick under 10,000 copies, 9,999, but 119,018 copies overall. That's pretty good. It is coming up quickly on Metroid Fusion, about 150, 160,000 will get it there, becoming the second best-selling Metroid game lifetime in Japan. That's very quick to get there, but let's also take a look at the hardware sales. Switch OLED model at the top, 61,169. Appears to be supply constraint, but is still coming up on 250,000 units very rapidly here. Then we have the regular Switch, 38,658. The PlayStation 5, 11,526. The Switch Lite, 8,295. The Xbox Series S, which continues to perform, I would say, above expectations in Japan, 3,815. PlayStation 5 Digital Edition, 2,754. PS4, 462, and the new 2DS LL that I guess they're still finding in the back somewhere at 449. Then the Xbox Series X at 74. So overall, Metroid Dread, I would say, has performed above expectations in Japan, but it's all going to come down to North America for the most part with these MPD results to see if Metroid Dread can get to that 3 million mark in the first year. It's done what it's needed to do in Japan. Now it's time to see what it did in the US. Again, we'll find out next month with that MPD report. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with Sony, their financial report, as well as a new label they've formed for their PC ports. We'll actually start with that. Let's head over to VGC, where they say on Wednesday, Steam users noticed that the platform holders' PC releases had their publisher switched to PlayStation PC LLC from the previous PlayStation Mobile label. According to a corporation wiki listing, Sony Interactive Entertainment registered the PlayStation PC name in April this year via its California-based headquarters. So it was mentioned here, this is a formality from VGC, of course, looking at this. Okay, they want to do that because they are moving so many games over to PC now. But if you also look at their PlayStation Studios profile page on Steam, it also appears to have increased by 4 when it comes to their listings. One, I guess, would have been God of War. We think the other one is Sackboy because that appears to have shown up in SteamDB's listings. But like the other two, could be anything. And it does make me wonder if we could just start seeing games like Ghost of Tsushima show up on Steam, and maybe that window from release on PlayStation to release on PC starts to shrink. Maybe we get to a point where it comes out on PlayStation like later on that year, it shows up on PC, because the thing I believe that Sony is trending towards is having their own launcher on PC and then attempting day and date releases, PS5 and PC. They don't have to pay Steam their 30%. And I mean, face it, the PlayStation games are a big enough draw on PC. They don't need to rely on Steam. People will download the PlayStation launcher to get a God of War Ragnarok, to get a Last of Us, to get the next Horizon, right? Like Ghost of Tsushima. All these games that Sony has been building up with these IPs and their massively ballooning budgets. I mean, yeah, they're looking for revenue anywhere they can get it, and PC is a massive user base that I'm sure would love to come in and start paying full price for these different PlayStation titles. They're even doing it at a slightly discounted rate, $40, $50, years after they've been out on PlayStation. I'm sure Sony is noticing this. The return on investment was too good to ignore on Horizon, so I think you're going to see that window shrink down more and more to eventually have a day and date release. And the one that I still think they could try is that Last of Us remake. It's technically already been on PlayStation, and they could kind of play it off that way. And if it has a multiplayer component to it that we kind of feel like it's going to be a factions multiplayer, and it would have microtransactions, yeah, they would benefit from that larger audience and user base, potentially with crossplay. But to me, this PlayStation PC label, it's just confirmation that this whole thing with Sony, PlayStation, and PC is going to be accelerating more and more. I mean, God of War is up in January, and we didn't even know it was coming to PC until pretty recently. We thought Uncharted was next, so who knows? Maybe next year we see Sackboy, we see Ghost of Tsushima, then Gran Turismo starts showing up. All of a sudden, all these PlayStation games are just on PC. It's more money for Sony and more people get to try out these different games. So I think for the most part, it's good across the board. There's concerns that it could hurt Sony's overall PlayStation sales, but I just think there's a lot of people who just would prefer to play their games on consoles and not even really touch a PC. Like I said, I was in retail for a long time, and yeah, there are a lot of people who didn't even want to deal with playing these games on PC, whether it's troubleshooting, building a PC, or anything. They're just working on a PC all day. They just want to come home and sit on the couch and play a game. So what Sony's doing here, I think, is smart, and they're just testing the waters to see if they could work towards maybe a future where PlayStation and PC get games at the same time. We'll find out, though, as we go through this generation, and hey, we'll see if they try it with something like that Last of Us remake. Next up, let's talk about Sony's financial report, this being for the previous fiscal quarter for 2021, that being from July to September. Now we're going to head over here on Reset Era. They have a nice thread that was set up that really has all the information in one place, so I'll link to that down below. This was posted up by Arm Gunner, and we'll go over some of the info that was posted up here, which includes over $5.86 billion in revenue. That is the biggest quarter two revenue ever for PlayStation, which also means for any platform holder as well. If you look at the hardware, 3.3 million PlayStation 5 systems shifted off of store shelves, or I guess off of virtual store shelves. That brings its lifetime to date to 13.4 million at the PS4. selling 0.2 million units. I think that's pretty much topped out at 116.2 million. Might end up touching 117 million if they just find some more in the back of a warehouse somewhere. But I think that's pretty good for the PS4 overall. Very successful console in terms of numbers sold. And we look at software, PS4 and PS5 software, 76.4 million games sold, but only 7.6 million Sony published games. I say only because compared to the previous year, 12.8 million sold. So yeah, a bit down, but I think as we go into next year, you get Horizon, that'll come out and run through this quarter. You'll see Gran Turismo, same deal there. And then, of course, you'll see God of War towards the end of the year. I just think next year is set up to be a much bigger year in terms of software for Sony than this year. They also mentioned their PlayStation Plus subscriber number being up from 47.2 million, up from 45.9 million. That from last year. And that's not a massive jump. It's actually a pretty small growth in terms of their subscription and network services. I don't think they've topped out with their PlayStation Plus memberships, because if you look at that, that's not even half of what they have overall for PS4 consoles sold. And then, of course, PS5's coming in now. So I'm not sure if they're looking at that and thinking, oh, what else can we do to continue growing these PlayStation Plus numbers? That's a big part of Sony's business, but I mean, there's still almost 50 million people have signed up to pay $60 a year. That's still pretty good money for Sony. Overall, I do believe the big challenge Sony's about to face is the PS5 versus the PS4. The PS4 had I don't want to say a slower first year, but it certainly was nothing compared to what they did the second and then third year, where things really started to ramp up for them. And the PS5 is having issues when it comes to just creating them, just getting them out to store shelves or to retailers, because of the supply shortage they have right now around the chips and just other components. If they're not able to solve that, it will fall behind the PS4, and that's not going to be a great look for them, because then they're going to have a hard time just getting their money back for some of these ballooning budgets, and that kind of makes sense with their big PC push right now, especially in the early days of the PS5. Eventually, they'll have a PlayStation 5 user base, I'm sure, over 100 million, since every single system Sony's made, except for the PS3, home console-wise, has crossed that 100 million mark. So it's going to take them a little longer, I think, to spin up this generation, which means it might end up being a longer generation. But still, the PS5 continues to roll along. It's at least ahead of the PS4 now. It's just going to come down to what they're able to do into next year, which might end up being redesigning parts of the console as they've already done, or just working hard to source more and more parts. At least we think by the end of next year, the chip shortage will be alleviated, and then they can hopefully start to ramp things up much like they did with the PS4. Next up, let's talk about the Nintendo 64 and the Nintendo Switch online service. We know Nintendo is going to be adding more and more Nintendo 64 games as we go along. Hopefully it's more than like one a month. I'm hoping for like 2 or 3, but I will say the 64 library, it's a pretty limited library overall when it comes to quantity. I think it's like 264 games, like US. Then if you take all the regions together, it's like 400 something. And think about all the sports titles that will be eliminated, heavily licensed games, certain racing games, obviously the wrestling games. I mean, the list goes on there. You're not really left with many. So when we heard that there was a data mine that took place, and it was pretty early on when we mentioned it, people started to realize, oh, we can just kind of go through and start to match these up, because it appears to be completely in alphabetical order. We can take a look at this tweet here just to remind you of what we're going off of from Mondo Mega. Initial data mining from the Nintendo 64 app is somewhat fruitful. Going by the game IDs, there are at least 38 Nintendo 64 titles planned for Nintendo Switch Online. Now, they mention here the list in alphabetical order, so you can start to fill some of these in. If you look at, for example, 37 being Majora's Mask, 32 is Smash, 33 is Wave Race, and 14 through 16 is Mario Party. Like, are they going to put 3 different Mario Parties? You know what? It's Nintendo. They're weird. It wouldn't shock me. But if you take a look, for example, some people on Twitter, like you to here, started to just put together like a list of different games. I mean, and some of these, I can't say they'll be there, because if we go and look at the list, some of the licensing, but I could see, for example, 1080 snowboarding. I think that'd be pretty cool for that to show up. Banjo-Tooie makes complete sense to me. Bomberman, sure. Cruis'n USA, that probably would be there. And then if we go down the list, like I said, Mario Party 1 through 3, that's so weird, but it's Nintendo. And if you start kind of going through the alphabetical list, like, and you look at all the M's, for example, it's not going to match up to anything else, really. That's why it's so obvious that we would see these. Ogre Battle 64, I believe that one was on the Wii U, which is another reason people are starting to match these up and say it's very possible. But again, they're just kind of matching these up as we go along. The one that I question, though, is WWF. It's just kind of slotted in there. I just don't see any way that a wrestling game with all the licensing, all the likenesses would work out. So that's the part that I'm questioning a bit. Wave Race, Super Smash Brothers, sure, that makes complete sense to me, but WWF, that's a bit of a stretch. But take a look through the list, pull up the Nintendo 64 games on like Wikipedia or something, just go through the list alphabetically and see what you can fill in, because you'll quickly come to a realization, wow, there really aren't that many 64 games, and you can pretty much start to piece this together for yourself to see what Nintendo could have in store for the next 4 years, 38 games. That's gonna last like the rest of this generation, maybe some next-gen launches even. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about Activision Blizzard and apparently them just absorbing another developer. And it's unfortunate because it's a developer that I've really grown to like. They've made some very good games and ones that you've probably played as well. Let's head over here to Eurogamer, where they say veteran development studio Vicarious Visions will be rebranded as part of its ongoing move to become part of the embattled Blizzard. This is all according to a report from Polygon, where these are details from Vicarious Vision staff who were apparently told about the name change during a recent company call. In fact, it appears to have been light and quick. Like, they were just like, oh yeah, you guys are losing your name. You're just gonna be Blizzard now. That's like super disrespectful. I mean, if you look over here at Polygon, the merger was announced earlier in 2021, but workers were told Wednesday about the name change. In fact, some of them mentioned that they were just blindsided by it. I mean, think about the series of events here, all right, as to what happened. We have that lawsuit, massive lawsuit with Activision, right? And we hear that Vicarious Visions is being shifted over to help with Diablo 2. Well, they're very talented, obviously. Tony Hawk, right? You played that, the recent one, very good game. Oh, we're gonna make them work on Diablo 2 to get that out the door and working, because we want all these different platforms. Okay, we'll go work with Blizzard. And then you hear about this in a company call. They're like, oh, you guys have been called Vicarious Visions 30 years, very storied developer. You're just Blizzard now. Wow, that's tough. Like, really, like, disrespectful. It doesn't even really describe it, and that's rough. Like, I did like a lot of what Vicarious Visions has been able to accomplish in nearly 3 decades, and just like that, their name's gone. And it's a shame because I was hoping they would try something else with Tony Hawk's Underground. Like, with what they did with Pro Skater 1 and 2, I was curious as to what their future would be, but it looks like their future is just being a part of Blizzard. And before we go to the comment of the day, we're taking a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I asked, do you play your games on PC or consoles more? 76% said game console, Xbox, PlayStation, or Nintendo. You can pick one of them. And then PC, 24%. So, of course, you see a lot of people who say, oh, if the game goes to PC as well, the consoles are not going to sell. Again, in retail, I've seen so many people who just don't even want to touch a PC when they play games. They just want to sit down, and you want to pop a disc in, let it install, and then you play without having to worry about drivers or Windows. Windows is probably one of the biggest barriers of entry. It's not even building the PC anymore. It's just Windows and getting the drivers right, making sure everything works optimally. That's the biggest thing there. So if you just get a console, you drop it in your living room and you play. For a lot of people, the convenience is even worth paying for PlayStation Plus and Xbox Live Gold or Game Pass or Nintendo Switch Online just to play online, rather than have to worry about making sure Windows doesn't explode on you one day. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day as you're seeing here. This is from Bruce saying, I'm with you on Star Ocean. I'm rooting hard for it, but yeah, it's not been great lately. The last ones I enjoyed was on the PS2. That was so long ago. Those were the glory days of JRPGs, was on the PS2. Wow, there's so many of them to pick from. But I will say, it seems like we're having a bit of a resurgence on this. Tales of Arise just announced yesterday that they had reached 1.5 million sold. That is incredible for a Tales game, and I think the stage is set for Star Ocean. This is like right here, Trice, if you can put out that really good Star Ocean game, I think it'll sell. I think people will latch onto it. But if you put out a bad game, people are really gonna notice, because JRPGs are, like I said, starting to kind of make a resurgence here overall. We see Dragon Quest XI has done very well, and with Tales of Arise moving the needle when it comes to sales, I'm hopeful that Star Ocean shows up, is good, and has a big breakout for the series, because this is one that should be much better than it's been in the past couple of entries now. So I'm crossing my fingers. I will check it out next year, of course, and just hope for the best. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to be here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button, really helps out. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here. Today was Sony's new PlayStation PC label. What do you think that means for the future of Sony and these PC ports? Also, what about Sony's latest financial reports? Do you think the PS5 will be able to keep pace with the PS4 or the Nintendo 64 games that appear to be leaking out through that data mining? Why don't you go ahead and try to fit the puzzle pieces together and see what you come up with that listing. Thanks guys for watching. Have a great weekend. I'll see you back here Monday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern time for Newswave.